Thank you very much, and welcome back to the program. This following program segment is brought to us by Chuck Malamut, a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley. The information, views, and opinions expressed on this broadcast are those of Chuck and do not necessarily reflect those of Morgan Stanley or its affiliates. They are current as of the date of this broadcast and are subject to change without notice. Neither the information provided nor any opinion expressed herein constitutes a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. This presentation is for informational purposes only. We're also brought to you this hour by the Mays Landing Golf and Country Club. And I'll tell you what, now there are a lot of neat things happening on Friday, June 19th at the Mays Landing Golf and Country Club. Number one, the 8th annual Hurley in the Morning Golf Open Extravaganza. We become the nerve center of Atlantic County and beyond for the hours that we are there. And our event starts early in the morning, which was a great suggestion by the great Ed Klein when we were deciding on so many things, what we would be, how we would do it, and all this. People started talking about what time should the event be. And you would think that it would have just immediately come to mind for me to say, well, of course, we're a morning event. Ed Klein said, Harry, you're a morning guy. This is a morning event. That's it. I said, you're absolutely right. And so Ed Klein is really the person that picked the fact that the Hurley in the Morning Golf Open should be a Hurley in the Morning event. It's kind of interesting. And on Friday, June 19th, we will do it all over again. We've got a lot of great golfers and wonderful supporters and a really exciting silent auction. And then we'll be done for a couple of hours, and then it will be paint night on the patio. So we'll be out on the patio, and then it will be paint night on the patio beginning at 6:30 p.m. Again, the coupon discount is available for you by going to mayslandinggolf.com and just click on the paint night advertisement that's near the top of the website. And no reason not to do it because you put in MLCC 20 and you'll have a $20 off each ticket. So you'll be able to eat, drink, and paint at the Mays Landing Golf and Country Club. Chuck Malamut joins us in just 30 seconds. Stay with us.
The International Academy of Atlantic City is a new free public charter school, now enrolling grades K through 3 for September 2015. Registration celebration at Surf Stadium on Saturday, June 13th, noon to 3 p.m. Food, games, raffle prizes, and parents can enroll their kids. Call 609-498-6350. Visit iaac.sabis.net or visit our school at 25 West Black Horse Pike, Pleasantville. See you noon to 3 p.m. at the free registration celebration on June 13th at Surf Stadium.
You know, this is an awesome concept that literally their service provider, SABIS, they have been around since the late 1800s. So this Saturday at Sandcastle Stadium, it's also called Surf Stadium and all these other different things, but you know exactly where it is. It's right where we'll be having the insane inflatables, which, it's going to be happening as well. But this Saturday from noon to 3, prizes, games, food, fun, and you can also fully register your student for the September 2015 school year. So that's all happening with the International Academy of Atlantic City Charter School. Chuck Malamut is here. He's going to be talking about, well, the market update that he always does. I'll be very interested when we get to the May employment report because these numbers just have been so filthy cooked that I cannot wait to hear Chuck's expert take on them. Chuck is going to review first quarter 2015 GDP update, which, as you know, is devastating. For the past 7 years, we have actually experienced contraction in the first quarter. Since 1947, America has grown in the fourth quarter by 4.3%. This is the first time in American history for 7 straight years we are at negative. We're at contraction levels regarding the GDP. And then Chuck is also going to talk about the global growth recovery, which obviously is very, very important with global markets and everything that goes on. It's not a situation where America can have blinders on. We're directly affected, and we, of course, directly affect it. Joining us without further delay, my very, very good friend, Chuck Malamut.
Good morning, Harry.
Hey, Chuck.
Another great morning for sure.
Woo! We've been doing it. We've been bringing it.
So I think the best way to describe the market right now, if we were to capture it in one word, I think I'm going to use the word confused.
Oh, that's a bad word. That markets don't like to be confused.
Only confused in as much that we still remain somewhat in a what I'll describe as a trading range. Volatility is continuing to pick up. It's very common now to see a day or a lot of days where the Dow, is trading, closing above or below 100 point.
And Chuck, I know you don't sweat this. I know you don't sweat this, but the Dow is now 9 days in to the second quarter of 2015, and the Dow is actually in the red for the year. Correct?
Well, Harry, where we are right now, if we take a look going into the weekend, the major averages are up just ever so slightly, and if you take yesterday into account with respect to the Dow. The Dow is up like 1.19% going into yesterday.
So
you're right.
Earlier in the week. At some point.
You're right on the edge. So it's just been a very, very challenging year. Investors, are now seeing what happens when interest rates move higher. It's been a long time since rates have moved in an upward direction. And that, unfortunately, Harry, has a tendency to, move equity prices or stock prices in the wrong direction as well. So if you kind of take a step back and say, all right, year to date, S&P up just over 2%. The Dow, we'll call it at a break even. The NASDAQ and the Russell 2000, have performed significantly better. And those are more of your mid-cap and your small caps. As we have indicated, up until this past week, we've had a lot of positive momentum in the Far East and also in Europe. So, what is happening now is that there has been this upward pressure with respect to bond yields. And you think about it, interest rates have moved about 40 to 50 basis points. That being the 10-year. And when that happens, that ultimately, pushes your bond prices, lower. And obviously, investors oftentimes, when they buy a piece of fixed income, and if you kind of make a determination, what is fixed income in reality? It's buying, either a certificate of deposit, another form of government debt, a corporate bond from a good quality corporation that is labeled as what I'll call investment grade. And that means that you're going to own that security for, 5, 7, 10 years. That security will move in price based upon current market conditions, the amount of time before that actual bond matures, and the credit worthiness of the underlying issuer. And ultimately, if you have the patience and you understand why you bought the investment, it's to produce fixed income, a cash flow. And I think what investors need to understand is that this investment needs and should be held to the maturity date if that was the original intention. If you are looking to try to trade the market, then you're not going to be buying fixed income under those particular pretenses.
Chuck, local item. The city of Atlantic City, which was pretty much shut out of being able to go out and borrow, is back in business. They're borrowing at a higher rate, not insanely high to what it could have been. Wall Street is starting to look at Atlantic City more favorably. Is that my Pollyanna? Is that my eternal optimism, or could I say that and my head won't explode?
Harry, I think it's a combination of both. If you look at
that was my head exploding, kids.
if you look at what is transpiring in Atlantic City, yes, the bond market is pricing these securities. Certainly not in investment grade quality. There's no doubt about it. And the fact of the matter is, they are. This, I don't think, is the next Detroit. We've talked about this because there was a lot of discussion about the professionals that were brought in to assist, and it was immediately tagged, okay,
because they're bankruptcy guys.
And
you bring in bankruptcy guys, what are they going to do? But Chuck, in fairness to the truth, I want to also say, because I could have said it with my statement, I didn't forget. I wanted to add it to this equation. The city is able to bond again and go out and do this because the state is guaranteeing it.
Yeah,
I don't think that they would get it without the guarantee.
I agree with you, but there's a whole other discussion about the financial abilities of the state of New Jersey, and certainly New Jersey paper is on a comparative basis. If you were going to buy Texas, Florida, as an example, even New York, oftentimes, Massachusetts, you can buy Jersey paper for the most part, and ultimately get a higher interest rate because of the ratings that are being bestowed on the state of New Jersey, which aren't, for the most part, aren't particularly good. I mean, it all goes back to, I know there's ongoing discussion with pension reform and what the governor is doing.
Does that make it something that's desirable because the yield is higher because the alleged risk is there, but really there's never been any sign that the state will become insolvent or declare any kind of bankruptcy or anything like that? So is it almost safe? I don't want to ask you this literally at the uber professional level, but it would seem to me that you get a higher yield for something that is more secure than it would appear at first glance.
Well, Harry, I think it's a matter of understanding what you're buying and why you're buying it. There are more forms of municipal bonds than there are of individual equities. Do you buy, for instance, a county in the state of New Jersey that's a general obligation that has good, solid credit? There's absolutely no problem with that. Do you buy, a hospital bond in an area of the state that is somewhat economically depressed, that doesn't have the same, quality ratings as you get in, with a county in New Jersey that has a GO that's a AA plus? I mean, you have to be. It's like anything else, Harry. You have to be very, very careful. And I think the problem that we had, and this is actually, I think, you asked a great question because it's a wonderful segue. Investors for the last 5+ years have been stretching for yield, and because there has been nothing to speak of with short-term money, and now finally we were going to potentially get that rate hike. It's been discussed. Is it June? Is it September? Is it December?
With 1.7% negative GDP, I don't see rates getting raised anytime soon. I don't know about you.
Well, I think the problem is, as we started today's discussion, it's the fact is that there's just a lot of caution. And, equities, bonds are, they're struggling right now for the most part. And equities are basically treading water. And I think, and Harry, it's been a long time since we have seen, on a Monday, a positive economic report. On Wednesday, a negative, economic report. On Friday, a muted economic report. So the Fed is sitting back here, and you're going to, I don't know if you're going to like the statement I'm going to make, but now there is a discussion out there that the Board of Economic Analysis, which is another agency, basically acknowledged that there's statistical issues. There might have been some statistical issues that might have impacted first quarter growth.
I know, because you just changed the way you report it, and now it's not negative. They did it the same way it's been done since 1947, and it came out at negative 1.7%. If you change it just like they did unemployment, then all of a sudden you have growth. And I'm telling you, we're in the midst of destroying the country if we continue this kind of funny math. Chuck, we're at our first break. And I know you want to continue with your market update, and I thank you for your tolerance of my couple of follow-ups. Let me ask you one more real quick. If the New Jersey Supreme Court today, and I believe they're going to, they might do it while we're on the air, it might be before I sign off at 10:06, or it might be right after, but sometime today, the New Jersey State Supreme Court is supposed to rule on whether or not the state will have to make large pension contributions. Now, in fairness, Governor Christie has made more than Whitman, McGreevey, Corzine, DeFrancesco, Cody, all of them put together. I think the Supreme Court, and I think it's for political reasons, are going to hammer him and make him have to make some incredible payment. If that happens, that changes the math dramatically, doesn't it, Chuck?
Well, Harry, I think a lot of this has already been factored into why, a state of New Jersey general obligation only commands a single A rating at this point in time, or an A minus. So, I don't want to say it's baked in the cake, but oftentimes, a lot of these scenarios are built in. And look, if the ruling goes as what you just stated, it's going to certainly put more pressure on the state, and it could potentially result in another downgrade.
Well, that's what I think. See, if you are right, and and I'm not saying you definitively said this, but if it's already baked in the cake, then nothing should happen. I absolutely believe something will happen, which will mean it wasn't baked in the cake.
Then, Harry, with that being the case, that if an investor owns a state of New Jersey general obligation, they will be looking at losing, obviously, some of the principal value as that bond, if that bond is in fact downgraded. So, I think that, you sit there and you understand the issues. Certainly, you don't want to have a pension get cut. Mm-hmm. You and I get it. I mean, we've been working our entire lives. I think the big dispute that what you don't care for and I don't care for is the fact that when you had these multiple positions that someone had worked, creating multiple payments, and the fact of the matter is, sitting home and getting 60, 70, 80% of your of when you left, we can't function. And the problem with all this.
How about the game they played where you serve as a mayor or a council person for 20 and 25 years, then for the last 3 years they give you, like Sonny McCullough, they give you a state job or a county job or whatever it is, and then your pension is based on all those years. And maybe in Sonny's, because it might be different because of the timing, but the kind of thing that I am saying, and I want to take Sonny out of it because I'm not sure about his situation. He might have been a separate pension or whatever, and he's still earning the local one. He hasn't left, and he's been there long enough that he can collect that pension. But the point I'm making is, in many cases, they will work 20 and 25 years at 15 or 20-some thousand a year in this part-time elected position, and then they get a $100,000 job for 3 years, and then they retire as though they worked 28 years or 25 years making that salary, and then they get 66 2/3 of $100,000, and that's why we're broke as a joke.
Harry,
and Chris Christie fixed that.
If you look at, again, if you compare it to a couple things. One, what is happening with Social Security, the fact that, when we retire, because I'm not quite certain if you are going to retire, but if you retire,
thank you.
They pushed out the age.
Yeah.
It used to be 62, it's now 66, sometimes it's 68.
Yeah.
The other thing that has to be considered here with the transition over 10-plus years is the fact that the defined benefit pension plans, as you just mentioned, are prehistoric. They don't exist.
Yeah,
unsustainable. You do not get hired today in a either publicly traded company or a private company with a DB plan.
And now, thanks to Governor Chris Christie, you don't get hired in New Jersey with it anymore.
And oftentimes, to encourage workers to prepare for retirement, more times than not, there is an auto enrollment that you, as a new hire, have to default out of within a certain period of time.
Chuck, we're so late for this break. We've got to go. We're coming right back. The official financial advisor to the Hurley in the Morning program, Chuck Malamut. Take a listen for any couple of minutes, and you'll understand why for 25 years I have said that Chuck Malamut should be your official financial advisor. 609-383-2010, the number to reach Chuck and the Malamut Group that Chuck leads at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office. Our official financial advisor, Chuck Malamut, continues in just a moment. Welcome back. It's 27 minutes past the hour. The official financial advisor to Hurley in the Morning, Chuck Malamut, continues. All right, so are we done the market update, or you still
well, no, we are, but let's kind of get into jobs because, I know that's your that is well. Let me see. I think your favorite topic is oil, but that has been relatively stable, so we don't really
even
need
came
to.
Down a little bit.
We're not gonna focus on that. But I know that you sat here and absolutely cringed at the end of the week. I got distracted. I meant to send you the jobs report when it came off the wire, but you think about it. The May employment report came in, Harry, and I know that you and Kurt kind of chatted about this yesterday, and I have to laugh a little bit because I listened to the two of you go back and forth, and I don't think most people clearly get the points that you're trying to make. I mean, the fact of the matter is 280,000 new jobs were created.
Right.
And that, that has put upward revisions. I mean, what the Fed did, or what the government did is they put revisions in a positive manner on the previous months, and that has now created sort of an uptick within a labor participation rate. Now,
so crooked.
So when you look at wage growth, that had also accelerated for the month, 0.3%, and it's 2.3% year over year. So that means there's now some pressure with respect to wages year over year. And that's been the fastest growth rate that we've seen in the last 6 years. So
that's a shame to actually use phony numbers that actually will also hurt people's ability to earn an increase.
Now,
that is dirty.
I mean, putting that aside for a minute, and I'm not going to debate whether or not the numbers are phony.
Well, they are phony.
It's
we don't have to debate it.
What it's been reported, and at the end of the day, that is basically signaling that the labor market is getting a little healthier. And
does it feel it?
Well, I think,
anybody?
I think around here, no, for sure. But there are certain parts of the country where, I guess because a lot of people just elected not to get back into the market, that labor is tight, quality labor is even tighter. So there are parts of the country that workers are in demand.
I also did an analysis this morning, Chuck, that if you play it just right, you have up to $75,000 a year in federal benefits for staying home. Now, that's your Obamacare, that's rent, that's food, that's phone, it's furniture in your place, it's rent assistance, $75,000 a year not to work.
And I think you have oftentimes stated, or we as a country losing, the position of being number one as far as growth, and is this the country to be? For foreigners to want to try to matriculate to. It's really hard, Harry. I think when doing what you do all day long. For people, if they don't get it, then they're obviously not paying attention, or maybe they're just terribly distracted. But with the numbers that we received last week, it gives the Fed that oomph, so to speak. Now it's time. We've talked about moving rates. And the bond market already did it. I mean, evidenced in what's happened with the 10-year Treasury. So the question is, I think that the June meeting, it's probably not going to happen because there's still a lot of confusion. Most strategists believe that the September report or the September meeting will, in fact, be when the Fed starts, and there are still quite a few.
But what if we have a second quarter of negative GDP and we're in an actual recession? They're just picking a month regardless of what things
they're
are
not,
like.
No, they're not picking a month. I mean, when you look at when the Fed meets, I mean, as you get up to the meeting, they're going to make that decision.
But here's what I would think, though.
With respect to the raising rates based on economic conditions. But
I would think if we had a second quarter of contraction, and then if we have two straight quarters, quarter one and quarter two, of contraction, and we're in, by definition, a recession, I can't imagine.
Well,
I
think that.
I think we're going to have second
quarter should be significantly better than what we had in the first quarter.
Negative 1.7.
But remember, the first quarter, what I mentioned to you before, is that the first quarter numbers.
I know they just saw that
might in fact be different.
Yeah, they're going to revise them. They're going to. All I know is when the news came out, the administration didn't say, "Hey, we have to do better." They said, "We just have to change the way we report the numbers." I could pull the quote up right now, which if you look at what's unemployment now, I even forget. Is it 5.2? Or did it go up?
5. Is it 5.5? 5.4?
Right, it ticked up. It's so 5.4 or 5.5. The U6 is which I go to. That's closer to 12%, upper 11 point something percent. Those are the numbers that aren't cooked. The unemployment rate is cooked. 33 minutes past the hour, quick timeout, one more power segment, straight ahead, somehow, some way, in about 10 minutes or 11 minutes, we'll talk about first quarter, more if Chuck wants to, global growth in general, and anything else that Chuck has. As we continue with Chuck Malamut's fantastic financial presentation right here for 25 seasons on Early in the Morning, and to reach Chuck and his great team, 609-383-2010. That's the phone number for Chuck's team at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office, the Malamut Group, which Chuck leads. We'll be back in just 2 minutes. Welcome back. 36 minutes past the hour with the official financial advisor to Early in the Morning, Chuck Malamut. He continues. Chuck.
So, Harry, I think we beat up already first quarter. I mean, I'm merely stating the what I believe is to be the facts. You have another set of facts, so somewhere in between.
No, not somewhere in between. My facts are correct. I heard the administration say that the 1.7% negative result for GDP first quarter is because they just need to report the numbers differently. So in other words, don't fix anemic, and I can't even say anemic growth, worse than anemic growth, contraction. Don't fix that. Just fix the numbers, which is what they did with the employment numbers, because we are not at 5.5% or whatever it is legitimate unemployment right now. That's what they say, but that's only because they're taking people out and calling them discouraged. And you can make any numbers come out however you want if you're willing to just change the numbers.
Yeah. So Harry, let's move on here a little bit. We talked about how rates have moved about 50 basis points, 0.5% since basically April. And so the market is always ahead of the Fed for the most part. Mm-hmm. And as you indicated just a few minutes ago, and in the 5 minutes before that, and 5 minutes before that, there still seems to be this environment that we're in. I guess the best way to describe it is uninspiring growth. Not just here, but you are also witnessing a little bit overseas as well. So what's going to happen is that you saw these European bond yields. Remember, several weeks ago, the German overnight money was basically at negative rates, mm-hmm. where the bank, you'd have to pay the bank to hold your money. Well, that has since reversed itself, and they've had a surge in rates in Europe as well. So the global yields, where the U.S. was pretty much anchoring all of that, month after month after month, sort of fell by the wayside. It kind of, U.S. kind of rolled over, and now, we are in line with everyone else as far as interest rates are concerned. So you've had a lot of gyrations, in the bond market, and probably more so than you've had in the equity market. You've had a fair amount of technical factors, particularly with European debt. And I guess the best way to put it, remember how we always refer to the markets where everybody gets to the left side of the boat at the same time, what happens. And I think that it was a very, very crowded trade that was being developed over there. So while we've had volatility, and it'll probably continue over the intermediate term, the rise in rates we think will be somewhat now contained because of the demand from investors. Will
the markets move or appreciate if all of a sudden by the time we get to the second quarter, we also hear that first quarter has been revised upward and the negative 1.7, who knows, is now 0.5 plus, and then if the second quarter is 2% or something, will markets get a little happier?
I think the markets will get out of that trading range, and you think about,
and we won't have a recession threatening at hand.
The ongoing volatility that continues to be somewhat pervasive within the market. But if you go back and look at what's happened here in the U.S., profits continue to outpace what is happening internationally. So that's actually a good sign. The other consideration, Harry, is we've talked about and still believe that there is some money to be made and returns in these international markets. They've also taken somewhat of a step back at the same time. The only concern that I would really have is that if the Chinese government unleashed and allowed individuals to buy for the first time. So the Shanghai Stock Exchange, which is their stock market, is up over 55% year to date. So, and then when your favorite shows that I won't mention what they are, and it's not NPR, are in China, showing villages of people where there's 500 people, and they named this one lady as the queen of investing because her accounts happen to go up. That reminds me of where we were in 2008, where wherever you went, where you have, everyone talking about the equity market. So the good news is we don't typically buy that. We might buy the Hang Seng, which is the Hong Kong market, which is a little more tamer. It's still up 17% year to date. So we think that there's still money to be made in the equity markets. Global growth should improve as we get through the year. The risks are still out there. It's 840. We haven't even talked about Greece.
Is it remarkable, Chuck, that for 7 straight years the first quarter has been so bad in America when since 1947 we grew every first quarter an average, many more than this, but an average of 4.3%? Something is very, very wrong. And I seem to be one of the only people that will talk about it.
No, Harry, I do agree with you. I think that in the last 2 years in particular, because I can remember, if you remember the weather, it was just awful, throughout the entire country.
But they had terrible weather since 1947.
But I think it was more severe in the last couple of years. But that doesn't make excuses for what has happened. I mean, the fact of the matter is that if we were able to operate our businesses like we did a decade ago, we wouldn't be having these discussions with respect to lack of growth. Now, as you know, we do not talk about what happens, a few hundred miles south of here.
Yep.
But the fact of the matter is that, enhancements have to be made in order for our economy to get back where it needs to be and where it could be.
Closing 30 seconds.
Well, look, Harry, I think that, the equity markets are going to continue, to move in the positive direction. It's not going to be, 5 steps forward and 1 step back. You have to take that into consideration. We are approaching the summer. For the most part, things slow down on Wall Street. Volatility will continue. We believe for some time it's going to be elevated. There might be some consolidation. You think about it, we really haven't had much of a pullback this year. And last year we had 5 pullbacks, with 2 of them close to 10%. So, that would actually be healthy. I mean, investors don't want to hear it, but I don't think it's a bad sign. And as we get through the next set of earnings, the Fed, and ultimately these ongoing problems such as Greece. So I think investors need to be patient, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Chuck is always fresh, very informative. Thank you. Chuck leads the Malamut Group at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office. To reach Chuck for all of your financial planning needs, dial 609-383-2010. Please tell Chuck that I sent you early in the morning in the following program that you just heard. Brought to you by Chuck Malamut, a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley. The information, views, and opinions expressed on this broadcast weekly are those of Chuck, do not necessarily reflect those of Morgan Stanley or its affiliates. They are current as of the date of this broadcast and are subject to change without notice. Neither the information provided nor any opinion expressed herein constitutes a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. This presentation is for informational purposes only. Morgan Stanley Smith Barney, member SIPC. We will be back in a few minutes, and in about 4 or 5 minutes, we'll be joined by Brian Cahill and Hector Tavares. There is a really neat program. In fact, I visited with Hector last year, same time last year, on this, and Shore Medical Center is one of the presenting sponsors. One of our sister stations, also a presenting sponsor, Sojo 104.9, the Egg Harbor Township PAL Enforcer Challenge Mud Run. The course has been made even more challenging. There are new obstacles, and Brian and Hector will share many of the specific details coming up next in just a few minutes. Stay with us.